Global Multilateral, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Billy.
Welcome everybody here at the German Climate Pavilion. It's lovely to see you, and of course lovely to see you joining us from wherever you're joining us, which time zone in our beautiful live stream. So thanks of course to you for making space in your busy calendars. There are heavy rains right now, but I'm sure you can understand me well as we are now diving into the topic of our next side event, how to scale up social protection. And as you might all know, that social protection systems, when they are designed with climate objectives in mind, they can of course strengthen the capacities, especially of vulnerable livelihoods. So social protection, ladies and gentlemen, it is a key enabler of climate adaptation, of resilience, of this muscle of resilience, and of course when it comes to just transition. And it should be systemically integrated into climate finance mechanisms. And in our panel in just a second, we are diving into the how-tos and into the to-dos of that question in a second. So we would like to start our side event with the opening remarks of the head of division of climate policy, joining us from the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, Natasha Bianka.
Good afternoon to all of you. First of all, let me convey warmest greetings by my State Secretary, who was supposed to be here today, but unfortunately he could not travel because he fell ill. So I'm holding this opening statement on his behalf, and I'm warmly welcoming you to the German Pavilion. This year's COP carries a special significance. I applaud the Brazilian COP presidency and President Lula for their unwavering leadership to making this an implementation COP, putting people and the human dimensions of climate change at its very heart. While climate change affects us all, it does not affect us all equally. Those who have contributed the least to the crisis are hit the hardest. They deserve not only our solidarity, but our partnership and support. We cannot tackle the climate crisis without addressing social development challenges. The Belém Declaration on Hunger, Poverty and Human-Centered Climate Action, endorsed by Germany and many others at the COP30 Leaders Summit, highlights this connection and represents a milestone in moving the human dimension of climate action forward. The declaration specifically highlights the role of social protection in this regard and is setting out an ambitious agenda for implementation. Today, with this side event, we are already starting with implementation. Together with you, we are launching the joint guidance note on scaling social protection for climate action. The note, and especially the actions behind, are essential to breathe life into the Belém Declaration. The guidance note is a joint product by the Multilateral Climate Funds. The World Bank, many UN organizations, and the BMZ were instrumental in its creation. The note was developed under the roof of the Task Force on linking adaptive social protection and climate financing. In early 2024, BMZ initiated this task force as we were recognizing the enormous potential that lies in stronger coordination of social protection with climate action. The task force brings together a wide array of partners, including the major climate funds, from whom we will hear in a minute. After 1.5 years of productively working together, this partnership has proven a real success. Our launch today is testament to this great work. It is therefore wonderful to have so many members of the task force in this meeting sitting down there to jointly celebrate the launch as a milestone. But why are the joint results of this collaboration so relevant today? Social protection is not only essential for human development and the global effort to halve poverty. It equally is a cornerstone of national and global climate action and an investment in building the resilience of people to withstand climate-related shocks. The joint guidance, therefore, is more than a deliverable. It marks a breakthrough. As the first joint publication of the 5 climate funds, it moves us towards a more efficient and equitable climate finance landscape. By that, the guidance provides the foundation for what comes next: implementation. It sends a strong signal. Climate finance must reach those who need it most, and social protection is a cornerstone to make this happen. To achieve this, social protection and its interlinkages with climate-affected and fragile contexts have long been a central pillar of our development cooperation. We know that in order to achieve the goal of universal social protection, strong and effective multilateral cooperation is needed. This is why we have also initiated the multi-stakeholder engagement to implement the UN Global Accelerator and the World Bank Compass, often just known by its acronym, the MGA. Convinced by what was jointly achieved in the previous 2 years, we will continue to support the MGA with an additional 20 million euros. Our pledge will place an even stronger focus on strategic priorities, such as climate resilience and adaptive social protection in fragile contexts. This will also support the work of the task force. I am proud to announce as well that, given the task force success and the strong engagement of all members, we have decided to continue the work of the task force beyond COP30 for another year to accompany the implementation of the spirit of the Belém Declaration. Thank you again for your hard work and continued engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha, and of course we will see you on stage in just a second. You just mentioned already the joint guidance note, and of course we like to hear more about it. So it's my big honor to welcome now the Head of Adaptation and Resilience joining us from the Climate Investment Fund, Chitembo, Kawimbe, Chunga.
I'm trying to get used to the rainforest, but I hope I'll manage to do that. Thank you so much to be here today. I'm representing this on behalf of the 5 climate funds and also the team that sat together to develop these guidance notes. Oops. Sorry, I need technical. Excuse me. No, we're good. So this guidance note, the objective is for us to see to it that we integrate 2 things. That is climate finance and social protection. It is very clear that social protection, as the remarks had been mentioned earlier on, is very important for us to see to it that that does happen. And so this is what we do hope to see, that this particular guidance note guides each of our funds and also the governments to be able to integrate social protection in climate finance. So apart from that, it's going to provide knowledge as a knowledge resource and a practical guide to demonstrate that social protection can contribute to climate action in its totality, that is in mitigation, in adaptation, in general development and all. And also, we want to show that there are entry points to scale social protection within financial policies, frameworks, and financing windows in all our funds across the 5 the big multilateral climate funds. And it does provide recommendation of strategies to enhance integration of social protection in climate finance. So this is a very good tool, not just for us, the climate funds, but also for governments to use as they develop their programs, as they develop their projects in climate change. As already mentioned, all the 5 climate funds did contribute to this, including the technical members of the USP 2050. What is social protection and why is it so important for it to be integrated into climate finance? We do define social protection as those actions and activities that governments do undertake in their policies, in their programs, to reduce poverty, to reduce vulnerability, and in this case, climate vulnerability, and to reduce exclusion throughout the life of the people. When we see the impact of climate change on the various populations, we realize that this is very important, that we reduce those vulnerabilities, that we reduce poverty, and we reduce exclusion. So very consistent with what we do in financing climate change actions. What does it consist of? Social assistance in its various forms, depending on the country and the context. We do take into account that does happen. Social insurance, what happens when there's a flood and all the food has been taken away, all the grains have been washed away. How do we ensure that the families will still have access to food, who have access to shelter? How do we ensure that that is given to the people? And how are the labor market programs in the various countries, how are ensuring the transitions in the various systems do ensure that we create labor, positive, decent labor for the people and the communities. So this is what is consistent. That is what is being consistent in the guidance notes. More details are there, and we do hope that you're going to see much of that. So then, how does it contribute to climate action? If it's talking about social assistance, if it's talking about social insurance, how then is it contributing to climate action? I did speak to this earlier on about climate mitigation. So helping the people who are differently affected, how are they transitioning away from living on climate, from moving away from those activities that make them produce more emissions? How are they living with nature? What kind of economic activities are they undertaking? So through climate mitigation, we can help the people to be more protected from the impacts of climate change. In adaptation, it does strengthen the communities to recover and to cope and to bounce back to normal life after climate change impacts have happened. And we ensure that we integrate these within all the programmings. If it's in water resilience, is it in droughts, is it now extreme heat? How do we ensure that the people have got access to health insurance? How do we ensure that they've got food security? How do we ensure that they've got all the benefits that go to a community that is impacted by climate change? Also, loss and damage. Providing timely and transparent and cost-efficient response. It is very important. If climate... So if climate finance and climate action does not address that, then we have a challenge. That means we are having a challenge in addressing that. So we ensure that through loss and damage response in our climate action, our people are able to be very responsive. The system should be quick to respond to ensure that we minimize the impact of loss and damage. And finally, just transitions. We are all aware that we're shifting from our normal livelihood economic activities. So that means people need new skills, people need to have access to training, the communities affected, they need to be, that are really, really vulnerable. They're in these conditions that require them to move away, one, from the activities they're doing, two, how do they train and how do they have access? So that transition has to be just. So these are the 4 areas in which this guidance note does provide how do we help the communities, how do we help government, and how does our climate finance take into consideration all these 4 assets to ensure that it's responsive. I'll narrow down to what we've previously done in the climate investment funds. We did have the pilot program for climate resilience program. It was a 1.2 billion program. At that time, we all were not really considerate about thinking about social protection. However, it did pilot investments it did integrate social protection within its interventions. And the results were very interesting and very positive and encouraging. And we're using that in our next generation resilience program, which is guiding countries and the multilateral development banks to ensure that the vulnerability of the communities is integrated and social protection considerations are integrated in the programming. If that is absent, we find it very difficult to provide financing to a particular program which is not taking into account that. We are hoping that this program is going to be launched sometime next year, and thanks to the government of Germany, who has since committed financing to this particular program. We do not end there. Within the climate investment funds, even in our mitigation side of things, where we're undertaking industry decarbonization, accelerating core transition, we've integrated social protection considerations in the finance. There's need for just transitions in those areas. There's need to ensure mitigation takes into account social protection. So our programming, our climate finance is taking that into consideration. So what are the recommendations which are being found in this particular guidance note? So there are recommendations for multilateral climate funds ourselves, which we need to take forward into action, and also for development practitioners, and also for normal social protection actors. These colleagues need to ensure that they do take them into account so that holistically we do respond to integrating social protection in climate finance. Allow me to take you to the next slide, and I'll pause a little bit there because I would want you to go to scan the QR code, which gives you access to the details of this particular report. Sorry, let me summarize. So in summary, we are saying we're supporting climate funds on integrating social protection and their strategies in the frameworks and programming. We are still learning, all of us, as even climate funds, so we still need that particular support to look at what has happened before and how are we programming now, but there's still need for us to be given extra support for us to do better work, which is going to be more impactful. And there's also support for countries in developing very concrete and clear steps. This is usually countries will ask that, is this an add-on? Is this something which we need to do parallel? Is this going to be new reporting? We are saying no, you are going to integrate this into your programming, but that support still needs to go to the countries so that they are able to integrate that in their proposals, in their projects, and in their reporting. And then there's still need to continue providing a platform where all of us do bring together our knowledge, our experience, and share so that at the end of the day, our actions are going to be better informing and better approaches that align with every climate finance. So this is what should have come before I said that. Please do scan that QR code. It will lead you to this knowledge guidance note for every one of us to be at the same page, and we look forward to its implementation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chitembo. And see, even the sky is applauding. Can you still hear the ripple? Thank you so much for your insights, and of course, scan the QR code. These chairs are still empty, but they will not be empty in a minute. So may I ask my panelists to join me here? Taing, Kimeang, Oscar Garcia, Bianka, Kretschmer, and Natasha Bianka. Please join me. I'll do a proper introduction in a second. I just wanted to, yes, have a seat here on the second chair. No, this is, may I ask you to go into center? Yes, perfect. Thank you. Wonderful. So with our panel debate, we'd like to go a little bit deeper now on what we've just heard and listened to. I hope you could hear Chitembo well when it comes to applying the guidance note from a global momentum to a country impact. And with us to the right-hand side is Taing Kimeang from Cambodia. He's the Deputy Director at the General Secretariat of National Social Protection Council based in Cambodia. So thanks for being here. Then, of course, we already listened to her words. Natasha Bianka, Head of Division of Climate Policy at the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. We have Bianka Kretschmer also with us. She's a climate change specialist coming from the Adaptation Fund. And last but not least, Oscar Garcia, the Director of Monitoring, Evaluation and Learning from the Green Climate Fund. So to all of you, thank you for joining. And of course, for bringing in your perspectives and your thoughts on the question, how can the guidance note be used to integrate social protection into fund proposal, and of course, what is then also which support is needed at the country level. We have, of course, as you just heard, 2 climate funds that are now present, that have contributed to the development of the joint guidance note, and that are members also of the task force. Cambodia was selected in that panel as a country representative to highlight, of course, your experience in a second when it comes to integrating social protection in national climate strategies. And that's why I would love to start. So, Taing, the first question, of course, goes into your direction. When we look into the lens and the spectrum of Cambodia, which has made a strong progress in integrating social protection with national climate strategies, maybe you can give us an idea, how do you plan now to access the multilateral climate funds with a proposal integrating social protection? What are your thoughts?
Yep. First of all, thanks for inviting me to be part of this interesting panel discussions, and thanks for the question as well. But before going to your question, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate and appreciate the task force on launching this guidance note. And I think this is really timely, as our keynote speakers already mentioned. Berlin declarations put social protections as a key things to address human vulnerability. So I think that is really relevant and timely. And for social protection in Cambodia as well, as you all may already know, we had taken effort to integrate social protections into our NDC 3.0, and this is the first time, and the government view this as an important tool to address climate vulnerabilities for the population, especially the poor and vulnerable who are disproportionately affected by climate change. So, as well, in this, I would like to thank Germans and Australian governments through GIZ, as well as UN agency in the countries who help us in this integration process, which make it a success. And in this, as already mentioned, Cambodia is highly committed to climate change, and it is reflected in our NDC submissions in July, and social protection is a part of that. As well, in our social protections policy, climate is also a center of our focus. It is one of the key objectives for the governments in the new phase of social protection implementations. Earlier this year, we launched the National Social Protections Policy Framework 2024-2035, and social protection is a key focus. And linking to this, right, now we have integrated social protections in NDC, and we have 4 key measures. And I'm glad to see that these 4 measures are highly in line with what just presented in the guidance notes. We look at strengthening the existing systems to build people climate resilience. We look at shock responsive social protections, as well as promoting inclusive and just transitions for those who are affected by climate change. And lastly, we also focus on climate-sensitive housing support as well, which is key areas in our new phase of social protection implementations. And now it comes to implementations. And the question is like, how can we mobilize different resources, including climate funds, to implement these measures? Previously, governments spent a lot on this, and we hope to access different financing mechanisms in order to further scale up as well as accelerate social protections measure in Cambodia. And climate fund is something key and important from our perspective. And on the support need for the implementations, I think
Excuse me, maybe we can come to the to-dos and the support needs on the second round. So thanks again for this first impression. And then I'll do a second round promised with the support needs. Yes. I'd like to come into, to let Bianka and Oscar comment on that. Bianka, I'll join with you. What is then needed? Of course, we just heard one example when it comes to enabling and encouraging more proposals that include social protection. Take us with you.
Thank you very much, and thank you also to BMZ for initiating the task force, to all the task force members, to the support unit. As the climate funds and as Adaptation Fund, we're very happy to see this launch today. A lot of work has gone into this, and we really hope that this can showcase what the climate funds are already doing in terms of integrating social protections into their projects, and also to provide guidance to countries and entities, how this can be done, provide guidance, and really also to the multilateral climate funds, the climate community as well, that actually integrating social protection can lead to higher impact climate projects, to higher quality proposals, and ultimately can also make it easier to access finance. So in the Adaptation Fund, what we see is that due to its unique mandate of financing concrete adaptation projects in the most vulnerable communities, it is already quite aligned with social protection principles. There are various entry points. We already have a number of projects in our portfolio, actually including from Cambodia, and maybe I can talk about that later. And so we see a strong foundation. In fact, the Adaptation Fund doesn't prescribe any particular sectors or approaches. All projects can be submitted to the fund as long as they can demonstrate that they are well aligned with NDCs and NAPs. Again, Cambodia is a very good example where it was already integrated into the national strategies, which then also made it very easy to justify it in the funding proposal. So in terms of going forward, how to encourage more proposals, this is something where, right, if I may respond to that. What I would encourage to really look into integrating this into countries' NAPs and NDCs, to make this link and the justification in the relevant proposals to the climate funds, because we do like to see it. We might not always call it or label it social protection, but it can be financed, and we welcome it.
Thank you, Bianka. Oscar, of course, I'd like to hear your perspective coming from the Green Climate Fund as well. So what is needed to enable and encourage more proposals that include our topic of this side event? To all the newbies here in the room, we'd like to scale up social protection. So from your perspective, what is needed?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for the invitation. Vielen Dank für die Einladung. We are delighted to be at the German Pavilion and very glad to join our sister funds and demonstrate our strong commitment to being more cohesive, coherent, and complementary among the vertical funds. It is clear that social protection is a smart investment for climate action, and that's because we're focused not just on getting the money out of the door, but on resilience, returns, and inclusive progress. Then one of the most promising, scalable, and underutilized investments levers that we have today is adaptive social protection. That's because we see climate risk as a human risk. Climate change is not just rising sea levels and hotter days, but it's increasing poverty, hunger, job loss, and migration. That's why adaptive social protection system programs like cash transfers, social insurance, and labor market interventions protect people during, after climate shocks. That's why there are a few areas that I would like to highlight in our response to social protection. The first one is that it enables a just transition in terms of moving away from dependence on extractive fossil fuels, but really leaving the pathway that needs to be an equitable and just transition with climate policies that are aligned to the priorities of countries. That's why we are supporting country platforms, and we just launched the support to 15 country platforms on Saturday as ways of integrating the collaboration of different stakeholders around this. The second is that we need to bring adaptive social protection at scale. It cannot be just isolated small programs, and for that, for example, COVID-19 gave us a very good example about how social protection systems can work. Right now, 52% of the global population is covered by social protection systems. However, in low-income country, it's only 10% of the population that is covered. Therefore, we need to strengthen national systems to do it better. The ways to do it, we identify. First, forecast-based cash transfers. When investing in social protection system that trigger cash support based on climate forecasts before that happened. Secondly, by supporting green public works programs. Fund labor-intensive programs that create climate assets like forest reforestation, flood barriers, or soil regeneration. And we have worked with GIZ in many projects like that. And thirdly, supporting livelihood transitions. We know that the just transition will require some adjustment, including through reskilling, and I think training tools, time-bound cash to support the shift to climate resilient and green livelihoods are ways to move in. And finally, if I may, digital and institutional infrastructure. I think we are in a time where technology is paramount, but that technology needs to be available to the people that need it the most. And therefore, supporting the national systems through this digital integration, we think that is an important way of pushing the agenda forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar, and of course to Bianca for bringing in your perspective. We are coming into that in a second, but of course, as we are here at the German Climate Pavilion, I would love to bring in again the German perspective from the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development into that conversation, because of course when we talk about the task force, also the ministry is supporting global initiatives. What are then, from your perspective, the key features to success? And maybe you could mention a project where the BMZ is highly involved.
Yes, happy to. Maybe let me highlight two things that were important and are still important when working with the task force: new alliances and innovative solutions. We believe that the task force has brought together both dimensions, new alliances, especially of the climate funds, and social protection actors walking hand in hand to develop innovative solutions to ease access to climate finance for adaptive social protection. And I'm glad that the task force was and still is a room for open and honest discussions and mutual learning. And I think this is very important to move forward together. We have not only learned together, but also developed in the task force a shared language on the topic that is mutually understood both in the climate and the social protection spheres. And moreover, there was time to develop new solutions to strengthen country systems with international climate finance, and also to develop solutions with nationwide scale. The solutions presented were related to the adaptation of social protection systems, in particular to make them shock responsive and to integrate them into climate finance strategies. And you asked for an example or maybe two. One example is on country engagement. BMZ is the biggest donor to the SAL Adaptive Social Protection Program, the SASP. The program supports countries in building adaptive social protection systems that respond efficiently to the realities of climate change in fragile contexts. We will continue to work there and will place an even stronger focus on responding to the effects of climate shocks in the region now. And the other example is on global engagement. Germany was the initiator and still is the core funder of the Global Shield against climate risks. This instrument is more and more integrating adaptive social protection in its country solutions, and in a similar fashion like the task force, the Global Shield was only possible with a broad coalition of stakeholders in climate policy and also by the use of innovative financing mechanisms, including solutions by the private sector. So I also think that the Global Shield, who is also a member of the task force, has really brought also a lot of inputs into the discussion. BMZ is not only a facilitator to the task force, we will also continue to provide support to the Multilateral Climate Funds, of course, and we hope that the funds will use the funds and the joint guidance note to foster adaptive social protection within your work and support to partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natasha. Taing, I'd like to come back to you to zoom in into the Cambodian example. Of course, you mentioned already how it all worked out very well, and from your experience, we'd like to learn, of course, from you what were the enabling factors, the levers that were then so successful in integrating social protection in this national strategy. Maybe you can give us some hacks.
Well, I'm not sure. That is not an easy question. I think different countries have different contexts, and we just happens to be a step ahead in integrating this social protection in NDC. From what we experience, is not how to say. I think it's three things. I think I want to share with all of you here as well. So I think the first one is on the strong collaborations between institutions. I think social protections, climate change, environments, we are in different sectors, different systems, but we need to actually bring everyone together, have everyone buy-ins on this. And I think that's quite a process actually. From what we experience, we need to hold different meetings. We go to different workshops in order to exchange ideas and knowledge about what is essentials about social protections in addressing climate change and how social protection can leverage on climate funds in order to further advance social protection. So I think there is a shared priorities and goal there, but we need to collaborate and discuss this. I think that is a key thing. And second one is on the technical assistance from partners in the countries. I mentioned GIZ and other UN agency in the country involved. So for us, this is a new experience. We need a lot of support in terms of evidence generations, in terms of technical assistance to support our role in this integration process, and partners in the countries have done really a good job in doing this in a coherent and supportive manners. And I encourage countries to leverage on all partners in the countries. They are there to help. So for this NDC integrations. And lastly, I think there is a high political commitment from the government as well, both for social protections and climate change. Oscar mentioned earlier the need to build on existing systems. I think that is key. For us, social protection is a new things. It's only started after COVID-19, but governments see this as a really important tool to help people cope with risk. And climate is also a big risk as well to the people, especially the poor and vulnerable. So building on the existing systems is really key, and with the political support, I think that is important as well for this integration process. So those are three key main points I want to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oscar, anything to add on to support the implementation of on country level implementation? Do you have anything to add on it? Also when it comes to cooperation and partnerships, what is then another very important priority that comes from your work experience right now that we need to keep in mind here at COP30?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Well, on one hand, working together, and I think the task force is really a very good example of aligning language, definitions, approaches. That is one very effective way of being more efficient in the use of scarce concessional finance for addressing these important shocks. But beyond that, I think strengthening national systems through the existing platforms is important, particularly building on the ones that are already operating. We did that in Kenya through the Kenya Hunger Safety Net program, where we use early warning systems to release funds in anticipation of droughts. We also did that in Ethiopia, where the Ethiopia's Productive Safety Net program led to measurable increase in tree coverage, contributing to the Ethiopia's NDC emission reduction, while at the same time creating rural jobs. And I want to highlight these two examples because there is a concern also among our stakeholders and partners that social protection is more geared towards traditional development support. And where is the linkage to climate? And I think it's important that we really establish that linkage in terms of the effects that the climate shocks are having on vulnerable people and show how adaptive social protection can really leverage the scale of the response necessary, because the climate shocks will be more frequent and more intense. And I think we need to be prepared for that and show with examples that it is possible to make a difference.
Thank you. Bianca, I'd like to forward this question also, of course, to you. Do you see any blind spots right now when it comes to partnerships and implementation on country national level that you'd like to tackle and that you'd like to make us aware of?
Sure, thank you. Something that I have noticed is that even by engaging in the task force, a lot of the agencies that have a lot of expertise on that topic, on the linkage, are also our implementing entities. Especially the multilateral and regional implementing entities. But as the Adaptation Fund, we also promote direct access. So through national implementing entities by promoting locally led adaptation. So I think there's also a lot of potential to support the capacity of these direct access entities. In designing projects that integrate that successfully. You also mentioned already some of the examples, but also in our portfolio what we often see is, again, it's not necessarily linked social protection, but it can be public work programs, cash transfers. It is through cash incentives to protect ecosystem for ecosystem-based adaptation, for example. It's support for livelihood diversification, support for women and youth. But yes, all of this, the potential is now to link this to existing national systems, social protective programs, to ultimately also reach more beneficiaries. And we also have set up over 600 early warning systems, which again, these should be linked to then national social protection instruments. So I don't know if I would like to call it blind spots, but it's more, we see a lot of potential to build on what we have right now to link these two systems.
Wonderful. And with that, thank you so much. Coming to the last question, and of course, would like to finish that and round up the panel before we come into a quick reflection note with Natasha. Where do you see, also, of course, from a German development cooperation perspective, where do you see then the future role of the task force? I know we cannot project the future, but you know, wishful thinking is always important, that we know in which direction we are going. So where could we lead, or where could be the goal?
I would say first and foremost, now it is important to bringing the spirit of the guidance note to life. So I think we're only halfway there. We have a guidance note now, but now we need to live it. This starts with joint dissemination, continue to learn together mutually through seminars, and also to joint support to individual countries, supporting them in developing proposals for funding, social protection through the Multilateral Climate Funds. There are, as we have heard already, programs that integrate social protection, but I do see room to scale that up further, and hope that the node will indeed be a good tool to guide the funding of the funds even further in this direction. So we stand ready to continue to listening and learning within the task force. And at the next meeting, we will also discuss some technical steps on how to move the agenda further. And yeah, we are happy to continue as facilitator for another year and looking forward to our joint work.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and with that, a big round of applause to Oscar Garcia, Bianka Kretschmer, Natasha Bianka, and Tian Kimeang. Thank you. Thank you. We are not finished yet, because now it's my big honor and pleasure to welcome here the Deputy Executive Director of the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage, Mathilde Bord-Laurans. Thank you. Oh, and Carlos has arrived as well. Carlos, yes, please join us. The more the merrier, of course. The CEO, the chairperson of the Global Environment Facility has also arrived. Carlos Manuel Rodríguez, thank you very much. Yes, we would like to use this momentum of the last 5 minutes of our side event session, of course, to ask you and to come in conversation with you, you know, what is from your perspective? Because there are so many perspectives, and when it comes to building and bridging synergies, we need to work together, which is, of course, the big topic of this COP. So what is something that echoes still in your mind, that you take away from the conversation, but also, of course, from the tremendous work of the task force? Mathilde.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. And I told you when I saw you before this session, I had not prepared before my talking points. So it's really going to be my reactions to today's session and also to the work of the task force overall. And thank you, Germany, for launching this because I think really it's a very useful work. Let me take a step back. Even in my previous career, I used to head the climate finance team, so I used notably to qualify what we call the climate co-benefits of climate finance. And a few years ago, it was difficult to qualify as climate finance a social project, a project with social targets, as if this was antagonistic. And of course, it doesn't make sense. I mean, Oscar reminded, of course, of the social impacts of climate change, and we're all there because we completely acknowledge that climate has social impacts and that it has to be tackled together. And the way we define climate finance is also shows how what is the intention behind. So it's very important that this has evolved. And over the past few years, we heard a lot about how to bring in the social aspects of the consequences of climate change into our various activities. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of a fund, the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage, which is the last one which has been created based on this acknowledgement, on this mandate, on this promise. So from the onset, to embed the social impact and how to answer and to respond to loss and damage and impacts on society into our activities. So we've come a long way. This is great, and I would like also to acknowledge that the task force has been very useful into, as you said, Natasha, sharing the language. It's a very practical report which has been prepared, simply acknowledging that there is a divide in between practitioners, in between people working on the social domains such as Taing and us working on climate finance. And it's striking to see how all the vertical climate funds have responded presence and willingness to really participate in this task force, and ability and confirmation that we are there and we are ready to deliver on this agenda. I'm sure you will reconfirm this also on behalf of Jeff. I know it's central for you. So I mean, this is an acknowledgement of all how we progressed in taking into consideration this matter. At the FRLD, so the newest, the last of the fund being created, we were not yet ready to open for business. We are now. We've launched last Monday the call for funding request, the first one for the fund. And now it's up to the countries to come forward, to put forward their proposal. And we are optimistic that countries will proposed funding request also working on social protection. So maybe to conclude, I would say 3 things. We still need the country to make the case. I mean, all the work on linking this social part into the NDCs is also very important. Also, of course, for the funds to be able to continue supporting this. We need us, vertical funds, to enhance our coordination and collaboration, and certainly we will need the task force to help us in that, in sharing also our activities and our practices within this task force. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, I would like to hand over also to Carlos. What is a perspective that we still need to reflect on, and what is a thought that you would like us to think more of when we go out of this event?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, and thanks for the BMC for putting together this task force, and also for the guidance note. A couple of elements here that I think are crucial to really address this in a comprehensive way. Last year, I attended 5 COPs. 5 COPs I attended. In each one of them, I was really clear that the challenge was the irrational consumption and production pattern of humans, and on all of them. And this element should bring to our attention the need to address one of the biggest challenges that humans has created in the way that we have structured our governments, which is on silos, on sectors, on fragments. You know, I used to be the Minister of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica, and I was blessed I didn't have a Minister of Energy and Mining to fight with, as is the case in every single country where you got a Minister of Environment and a Minister of Energy and Mining. So from the top of the global structure, the UN, the convention, all the way down to the level that we have organized our agencies in the executive branch, we work on silos. Today, all countries in planet Earth invest 34 times more financial resources in activities that contribute to climate change to what they invest in reverting climate change. And today, all countries of planet Earth invest 144 times more resources in activities that generate deforestation than what they invest in reverting deforestation. And let me make a parenthesis. 80% of those decisions that generate deforestation are coming from the Ministry of Agriculture. And the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Environment are part of the same team as far as I understand. Every time that I go to a COP, I see 2 tendencies. One is recipient developing countries conditioning action to more ODA without understanding that it is a moral imperative to invest in the human capital with or without ODA. And there is enough resources in many of these countries. I put aside 50 countries, which are LDCs and Cs, which is in the center of everyone's attention. But when I see middle-income nations questioning or conditioning climate action to more ODA, I think that we have a big problem. And the third element is that they see us, the climate funds, as the major driver of change. We manage just 3% of climate finance. I mean, it is impossible to be able to address our mandate if we manage 3% of climate finance. So when I was in Baku last year, attending the steering committee on finance, I was puzzled because I didn't understood how 97% of climate finance is being channeled. There's very little transparency on that element, and that generates lack of trust, and lack of trust is the biggest political challenge that we have in these conventions. So the fact that we agree to triple the size of the climate funds is a great decision. The GEF is right now is the first one going through a replenishment process, and let me tell you that I have my doubt that that commitment will be reflected in the GEF. Next year, GCF will go through that, and the Adaptation Fund, everyone. We need the climate funds to manage at least 30 to 40% of the resources, because we are already in an effort of integrating ourselves in facilitating access to our recipient countries and doing a lot of things that in first place we had done it many years ago, when we decided to create multiple funds for one convention. So I think that this is the overarching context that we need to understand so we can address this human-related issue. I will say that we are not, from the institutional point of view and from the policy point of view, we're far from being prepared to challenge the climate change. We tend to believe that climate change can be addressed by mobilizing resources from all sources, but we only put attention and report on ODA and not the rest. I mean, I would like to understand what are the plans of many countries in terms of mobilizing domestic resources for climate action, understand what is their gaps, their domestic gap, and how they're going to close that domestic gap. And that domestic gap will not be closed with more funds in these funds, because we catalyze political processes and institutional processes. It needs to be done through a more articulated national development policies, avoiding this lack of political coherence.
Wonderful. This will lead us, of course, to a complete second panel debate, and I'm so much looking forward to have you guys back on stage, as we have a tough cut. Unfortunately, I have to stop here, but please give a round of applause to Mathilde Bord-Laurans and Carlos Manuel Rodríguez. Thank you for your reflection notes. And thank you for coming and for your attendance. I'll see you soon. Thank you, and greetings from the German Climate Pavilion.
Global Multilateral, realizing just transitions. Welcome to the German Climate Pavilion at COP30 in Billey.